in an interim kind of hiatus at the moment because we don't have the local alcohol policy in place, and really until that's in place, what we want as a local community isn't available. So we're really just having to work off the Act, which is the way forward at the moment. So with that, if there's no other questions, I'll thank the presenters. Moved by Councillor Filipaina, seconded by Councillor Casey. We thank you both for coming in this morning. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just also acknowledge the Acting Chair of Māngere o Tahuhu Local Board, Carol Elliott, who's here.
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
The other
welcome,
chair,
Carol. Welcome.
The other chair people as well.
So we'll call the officers forward now then, please.
Name them all.
Yeah, I've just got Julie. Okay. That's it.
Right, thank you.
Good morning, councillors. Let me introduce again Liz Mackenzie, who's the Principal Advisor Panels in the Democracy Services team, and Mike Moody from our legal team. I'll just do the introductions. They have all the answers, really. Just a very, very quick background. As you remember, in August 2013, when the governing body made the decision for the District Licensing Committee structure, there was agreement that a review would be conducted. We delayed this review earlier this year to give some time for the development of the local alcohol policy. You asked us to come back in June with the results of the review, so this is what the report now provides. I'll just leave the background here. We'll take the report as read, and we're very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Well, just a question. Although it says that there's been, you've given us an indication of where the new licences on orphan club licence applications have come from as far as the different areas. The statement that was made earlier that 90% of the hearings are in the south, is that, have you any evidence or any indication of what the answer is to that? Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's, I think the comment that was made was the majority of the objections came from the south. Most of our hearings are in the central area at the moment. However, in terms of the volume of the number of objections that have been made to applications, yes, they are in the south, and also the local board objections have come from those southern local board areas.
Okay, but just in relation to that, just following up on that then, every licence has to be signed off by either a district licensing committee or the chair of a committee, is that correct?
Yes,
that's correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. I've got an amendment up there, alternative. This is based, and it's been seconded by Councillor Casey. This has been based on the local board presentation that we've just heard. Look, Chair, you've mentioned the fact that our LAP is currently out there, and now that won't come into existence at this stage till mid-2016. What I'm asking is for the councillors and committee members around to end up at least looking at option 3, up until we end up finding out really what happens when the LAP gets put in. We've been handed, and what's interesting was just been handed a minute from the Puketapapa local board, and I note with D, their recommendation there is that notes that the local alcohol policy once adopted may address some of the issues. So through you, Chair, I'm saying that option 3, as asked for by the local boards, is the option that we should be looking at doing. I also note, Chair, that in 6, the workload for the DLCs were 15 to 20% of applications, and in fact we've had about 1%, and we've also heard that there's about 90% of that from South Auckland. The hearings are in obviously town. That's the venue where they're held, no? So most of the objections, as you've just said, most of the objections through the local board have been South Auckland.
That's correct.
And so all the hearings, even though most of them in town, the objections that we're coming through. So can you clarify that for me, please?
Through the chair, the hearings that I mentioned in terms of the number of hearings being mostly for the central area, that is for premises based, so for
Okay.
premises applications that are located in that central area. And it's not about where the hearings were actually held. So in terms of those figures, the greatest number of opposition, either by those reporting agencies, inspectors, health or police, and objections, which give rise to hearings, that's actually occurred in the central city, and after that, it's the south. So it's when we're referring to those figures, it's actually for the premises and where those premises are located.
Oh, okay.
But the volume of objections in terms of, so for one hearing, for example, you might have 10 or 15 or 5 objectors compared to one.
And so the majority in South Auckland.
In terms of the number of people that have objected,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. So, Chair, I think this is a way forward for us. I mean, I'm assuming that prior to the LAP being adopted mid-2016, we will be having a look at a refresh of the DLCs. But what really sort of got me to put this alternative up was the greater consistency of decision-making within the specified areas, and that's our local boards. And also greater familiarity with local board-based issues. That's exactly what the local board has asked. So, Chair, that's the amendment, and I'm just hoping that the committee around here votes for it. Thank you.
Well, that's kind of we haven't actually put the motion that would be put on the floor. So you're saying straight off that we're going to change the system that we have to the new system. I'm quite happy to put that and I'll have to argue that from the contrary view.
Chair, yeah, look,
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, only because the 3 options were put in the paper, and the preferred one that the officers are saying is what we have in the current recommendations, Chair. I'm saying if they've given us 3 options, I'm saying option 3 is the one that we should be voting on.
Okay.
As in adopting.
So you've put that on the floor. That's on the floor. Okay, Councillor Fletcher.
Well, thank you, Mr Chairman. And in speaking to the recommendation from Councillor Filipina and Councillor Casey, firstly I'd like, if I may, to address a question. If you recall, the meeting in August 2013 was pretty heated. And I must admit I was very strongly of the view that we should have aligned the boundaries and the workload to those of our local boards. And therefore I'm inclined to support Councillor Filipina in this. But my memory of the day, because it became quite acrimonious, and some of us felt very passionately about it, that was the reasoning behind having the review, because there was great discomfort expressed by many of the members of the governing body, and it was not an overwhelming mandate. The vote was quite close from memory. Can you confirm that for me?
That is my understanding, yes.
Yeah, so Mr Chairman, I have not been one of those councillors who have been working closely on this issue since that time. I worked closely on it up until that time, and I'm very respectful of the councillors who have been working on this, but what I have heard today has reaffirmed the wise decision it was to have a review, and the fact that we are failing some of our local communities. And for that reason, Mr Chairman, I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Walcott, Mr Walcott, sorry.
Oh, me? Oh, halfway. I'm going to refer to that report that, what's his name, did James did back in, looks like April. page number 41. So I'm just going to go straight to his recommendations. Have we worked on anything to try and flesh out any of these things? Like number 18, encourage objectors to attend, or else make the hearings easier for objectors to attend. Plain English, things like that. The reason I'm going to ask that is because I used to go along to a few. We had them up in level 15. And to be honest, I found them quite unfriendly as well, or just not user-friendly. If I was an objector, I walked in there and there's a heap of, I don't know, people wearing ties with white shirts and suits. And I just sat down there and I'm wondering, gee, I wouldn't like to be presenting in front of all these people. But, you know, whoever turns up, who turns up. But also there was no kind of, like run sheet as to how the whole kaupapa was going to proceed. There wasn't even a clock, you know, how we're going to work this thing out. Just those little things that made the place user unfriendly. I mean, I remember going up there and the door was always shut. And I thought, oh, is this in confidence and I can't go in? So, I mean, I just want to know where we've gone with that. That's the first question. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you, Member Wilcox. Those are some things that have been considered and I believe are best addressed through the development of the work plan. The legislation has given us a very strict framework to work within, and hearings as part of that, in their nature, unfortunately, are quite formal. There is a process that the District Licensing Committee members and chairs must follow, and some of those things which end up being very intimidating to objectors are things like cross-examination and swearing in, and also weighting of evidence depending on how much of the hearing that they attend and participate in. We certainly do encourage objectors to attend hearings, and have heard definitely loud and clear that that is difficult for objectors to take time off work. And I believe that through the development of a work plan, we can address some of the things that have come up in terms of formality of hearings. There are some things like run sheets. We do provide some information, but we can look at how we can improve that information for objectors up front in advance of the hearing. And also just, I guess, lessening the formality and tone. I think those things will make quite a difference. And obviously there are some things that we can't change in terms of the hearings process in the way that the legislation has set that out for us. But certainly through that work plan, I think that we can address some of those issues.
So my next question really is about this, the language used within. Yes, unfortunately, we're bound by the Act. Is there provision for an executive summary that can go out to objectors or go out to attendees, you know, that just says, well, this is what they considered and this is where they came to? I'm just wondering, are we able to kind of précis and let's drop all the according to this Act or this case?
Through the chair, that's something that we can certainly encourage. The District Licensing Committee chairs are independent, and so each of them needs to make that decision on their own in terms of the way that they write their decision. But there's a message that can definitely be provided and encouraged in terms of making those documents more user-friendly and in terms of and plain English as well.
I've got one final question. Can you tell me how many commissioners we actually do have from South Auckland and how many actually applied that actually had local knowledge?
Through the chair, I'll just quickly refer. We have, out of our pool, 8 either members or chairs from the south. There are some local board members that aren't represented in terms of their physical address. So Otarapap Toitoi, for example, we don't have any members or chairs in our pool from that area. We certainly do have members who don't live in the south but have experience experience either through living there earlier or through their work or through a passionate interest that they have. So when we're allocating members to hearings, we take those things into consideration. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of that question.
Okay, so, and can you tell me how many came?
Oh, sorry, no, I don't have that information before me in terms of the numbers that applied. But it's my understanding we didn't get a full spread across all of the local board areas.
12. 12 people applied. Okay, now the question, I'm sorry, Chair, but I was involved with this process, so I really want to find out how it has gone. The question I have now then is, when we're selecting DLCs for, well, let's go with the one that's been presented to us, for South Auckland. Do we first go to that pool of South Auckland experience or those with South Auckland knowledge before going out west or out north or wherever?
Through the chair, yes, we do.